Michele and Nayte have officially gone their separate ways, and fans can't help but wonder, would the Bachelorette have had a different outcome if she chose someone else? What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Shared News Bachelor update. I'm your host, Blakely McHugh, joined with Zachary Reality, our guy for all the Bachelor news. Now, before we get into playing the hypothetical here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss any of our future videos. Zach, you've been such a busy guy. You had a birthday, you had VidCon, you have it all going on. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for asking. VidCon was such an amazing experience. I just went over the weekend, but there was also a lot going on in Bachelor Nation and a lot going on with Roe versus Wade. So it definitely was a pretty heavy weekend.
Yeah, there is so much going on. We had a lot of breakups, of course, Roe v. Wade, which you just mentioned. So much big news. Feels like maybe Michele and Brandon isn't the biggest, but we're talking about them because it's happening, right? It has been a little over a week since the two of them broke up. A lot of fans are now saying maybe things would have been different for her if she chose Brandon versus Nayte. So just to give a little bit of the background here for people who don't know, Brandon Jones made it to the final rose, but ultimately was not chosen. I, for one, as I'm sure a lot of other people were heartbroken. He was so sweet. I just fell in love with him. I think everybody fell in love with him. So first things first, Zach, being the expert that you are, did Michele make the wrong choice? Should she have gone with Brandon at the end?
You know, I kind of feel like it wouldn't have worked out with Brandon either. I still
No.
feel like Michele and Nayte could have worked out. I'm kind of confused what exactly went down with them. They didn't share much. You know, Michele has been in Iceland. She's kind of been disconnecting, from social media. I feel like with Brandon, he was just a little emotionally or immature for Michele. She seemed like she had her whole life together and she was really looking to like settle down and stuff. And I just felt like Brandon just was a little young for her. I know they were like only a year or two apart, but Brandon just seemed like he wasn't ready for that like large commitment. Plus, I think we're getting Brandon in
Okay.
Bachelor in Paradise, so that's going to be really exciting. I think Michele
Yes.
followed her gut and picked the right guy for her in the moment. It's just kind of sad that it all turned out the way it did.
I feel a little bit similar in the sense of I almost feel like he was too sweet or too nice for Michele. I mean, the saying like nice guys finish last, I sort of feel like goes into play here because he was just so sweet. But yeah, maybe that was a little too emotional. Do you think Brandon ever had a chance? I mean, he met her parents on one of their dates, and he even asked her dad for her hand in marriage really early on. Like, was it all premature? Do you think like Nayte was the front runner the whole time?
I mean, from watching the season, it seemed like she was always going to pick Nayte. I feel like Nayte was always her top choice. I really
Okay.
felt her and Brandon were more friend vibes. I liked that he was into her and, he was very clear in his thinking and his love for Michele. That was obvious. But I mean, you can't ask people's parents for permission after one date. Like, it just doesn't go over well, even if it's a TV show. So I think everything worked out the
Yeah.
way it was supposed to. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in Paradise.
Okay.
There's rumors he might be, possibly hanging out with Serene from Clayton's season. That might be a better match for him.
We did
She
talk
is a
about
few
that.
years younger than Michele.
I like your thoughts here. So we obviously, when we watched Michele go through the season, she was very candid about choosing the wrong men or the bad boy, if you will, which obviously people have said that Nayte fits that description with the tattoos, the piercings, got like a little bit of a swagger to him, but he had also never been in love before. He only, I think, had, what was it, one relationship, if that, but he never said, I love you. So I think there were a lot of concerns of whether or not he was ready for this kind of commitment. I mean, I know, Zach, you were saying that you sort of saw Nayte being the front runner the whole time, but I feel like what I saw was Michele trying to convince herself that he wasn't the one that she wanted. Do you agree with that?
I don't even know because I feel like he did like Michele and he loved her. I mean, they won the Bachelorette
Yeah.
together. They got that chunk of change. They never moved in together, and I think that was a red flag for a lot of Bachelor fans who were, keeping up with them because they got engaged over 6, 7 months ago, and it's just like if you really love someone, I know there was, Michelle's a teacher, she's busy, but it's like if you really love someone, don't you just want to spend every day with them? So I don't
Yeah.
know if they were just really taking their time to get to know each other after the show. But they just their lives just didn't connect and they gave it a good shot. And I don't really think Nate's to blame here. I know we're going to talk a little bit about his statements that he just put out on Instagram. He kind of
Yeah.
wanted to clear up the narrative surrounding him that he was this player and he was cheating on her. And I liked that he really
Mhm.
did that. I just really think it wasn't going to work for them and they gave it their best shot.
Yeah. So let's talk about the statement because you brought it up here that he really was trying to change this narrative because there's been some rumors out there that basically he is the one to blame for this relationship ending, either that he cheated or again he's got this bad boy thing and he even said it. He's like I think people give me this bad boy rep because of the tattoos, because of the piercings. I mean, and you said it yourself, we really have no idea what went on. Like it seems like they put a really like united front together although there were all of these kind of missing pieces, if you will. Again, not moving in together. They were very wishy washy of sort of what the future looked like. And I mean, who gets $200,000 to buy a home together, but then doesn't do anything with it for a few months, right?
Well, we don't know what they did with that money. A lot of fans are wondering if they're going to have to give
Mm.
it back, which I doubt it. They were handed the money, they were
I don't.
given it. Maybe they spent it, maybe they're splitting it, maybe they have to pay taxes on a large chunk of it. I don't know what exactly they're going to do. I know Michelle is living it up in Iceland, as I mentioned, so she could be spending some of it there. But I'm sure that she's going to have to give the ring back because we know that there is a 2-year rule for that. If you don't get married or you break up, like you have to give the ring
Yeah.
back.
So that's sort of what I think would happen with the money. I feel like there's no way that they would just
Really?
give $200,000 out without like some stipulations behind it. Like I think they're going to have a similar thing. If you didn't use the money, you got to give it back. I don't feel like that there's any way that she's like able to use this 200K Iceland trip. I mean, I'd be cashing in if I could, but I don't think that's happening at all. Okay, so let's just talk about her final options because she had honestly some really great men in the mix. We obviously had Brandon, which you've already said you don't think that they would have worked out anyways. But I mean, he asked for their parents' hand in marriage. He wrote like this beautiful note to her. I don't know. I really loved him. I thought he was a great guy. She also had Joe Coleman, which they had their hometown thing. And then she had Rodney Matthews. And I mean, who didn't love Rodney? First off, he had like the most amazing smile. He had the most infectious energy. Do you think that she'll try to reconnect with any of her final men?
No, I mean, I know it kind of worked out for Katie for a minute and then it didn't because she was dating John from her
Yeah.
season. But I think that, Rodney is definitely in paradise. There was some speculation that her and Joe maybe were hanging out because they're in the same city, but I feel like that ship has sailed as well. I think it would have worked out before the show if it was meant to be with them. I think Michelle just needs
Yeah.
to focus on herself and get herself happy again. She's had an exhausting year with teaching. She's on this trip. She's got to return to the podcast. It seems like she's going to be recapping The Bachelorette with Gabby and Rachel. So I think Michelle just kind of needs to find herself again and just get more stability because her life has been hectic and it's been messy and she really just wants peace. So I don't know if reconnecting with an old flame will work for her right now.
Well, also, it might be weird with Rodney because aren't Rodney and Nayte like really good friends?
Well, I think they're all friends. And I think that's what Nate also
Yeah.
said in his statement that it's not weird because he hangs out with all the guys from her season and he's gone out with them a
Yeah.
lot. So I think they just kind of keep it separate. And I think, people think on this show that you're going to fall in love, but everyone ends up being friends too because, you go through the same experience.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this in a last panel that, you're in this kind of bubble, if you will, when you're filming, you only have each other to talk to, you're sharing the same room and woman and everything else, or man. So it's like you really do create those friendships that are kind of unmatched to other friendships. Okay, so we're taking those other final people out of the picture. But what about a reconciliation between Michelle and Nayte? A, do you want that, Zach? And B, do you think it'll happen?
I kind of think that they might need closure. I feel
Yeah.
like once they kind of heal on their own, it might be time to kind of reassess and maybe once there's a new season for people to focus on and think about, maybe they could have a conversation and see if there's anything left there to explore. And if that's what they want, then good for them. I'm happy for them, but it seems like they're going their separate ways.
I feel like the vibe that I get from them is that they're both very kind of private people, especially Michelle. So I feel like obviously all of this publicity and this newfound fame is difficult to deal with just in general, but especially if you're more of a private person. So I feel like that probably added a whole nother element. So maybe if the spotlight is off of them and now it's on Gabby and Rachel, they would have potentially a better chance. I have to think if I were in their shoes though, and they didn't give it a full chance in the sense of living together in the same city or the same place, that would make me feel like you said, that there wasn't closure.
Yeah, so I think that, once Michelle gets back from her trip, maybe the two of them will be able to kind of have a chat. I mean, they still follow each other on Instagram. Nate did
Mhm.
remove the Michelle Young fan account from his bio. So it seems like he's moving on. He was very quick to remove
Yeah.
that. And, he also shared in his statements that they gave it their best shot and it didn't work out. And, they've kind of drifted apart. So it's a little shaky. I'm excited to hear what Michelle has to say when she returns to her podcast and kind of gives us an explanation. But until
Mhm.
then, I mean, we really just can't help but wonder.
Only time will tell. All right, you guys. Well, that is it that we have on Michelle and Nayte and Brandon, and of course, the Bachelor relationships. Make sure you let us know what you think about everything we talked about today. Drop down your comments below. Before you do that, though, you've got to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell because we are always talking Bachelor updates, Real Housewives, entertainment, all the good stuff that you don't want to miss. But for now, I'm your host, Blakely McHugh, joined by Zachary Reality, our Bachelor expert. You can see our social media handles on the screen. Make sure you give us a follow and drop by and say hello, and we'll see you next time.